Alright, so let's get started with this. What we want to do is we want to create a series of steps for you which you can follow to basically go ahead and analyze the situation of cloud spend in your organization, and then systematically address each and every one of these items, right? So the very first thing which probably you should do is list out the top 10 resource types spend wise, of course, right? So how would you do that? uh, a good step would be open your AWS cost explorer in the management account or master account. Look at the data for the last 12 months or 6 months and see that what are the services which are where you are spending the maximum money. So list down the top 10 resources now, or resource types actually, right? So most of the times when you look at this, in most of the enterprise scenarios, if you see, the service where people spend the most are generally compute, which is EC2, and then RDS. So these are the top two in most of the organizations. Of course, then there can be other things as well. So what we'll try to do is we will try to go through each of these, and we'll discuss that what are the various factors which you should keep in mind while implementing each and every measure which is there for cost optimization, right? I mean, all of us know, yes, you can do reservation, but is it that straightforward? If it is, then organizations won't be losing money on cloud actually. Okay, so what we'll do is let's start with EC2. Okay, so what can you do in EC2? Of course, we know about reservation, we know about things like savings plans, right? So in which scenarios would you go with reservation or savings plans? The answer there is that you need to understand that how much is the usage, right? So an important aspect here is how much is the usage. So for example, is it like the resources running maybe, like let's say 8 months out of a year? If your EC2 instance is running 8 months out of a year, most of the times going for commitment makes sense. So when I say going for commitment, I'm saying that we can go for reservation or we can go for savings plans. We can discuss that which one should we select out of the two, but it's important to do this calculation. Now this is not a hard line that it is always 8 months. You need to you may want to go ahead and actually see that the instance type which is getting used, right? What's the break even point for that? For certain instance types, if you are using them for let's say 7 months roughly, it might make sense to go ahead and reserve it for 1 year, and the cost would be equal to, let's say, on demand charges for 7 months. So if I'm anyway running for 7 months, then maybe it's better for me to go ahead and reserve it, right? So you need to look at that. So a safe number would be 8 months, but you can always go and check for for each and every instance type. Now when you look at different environments, right? So environment could be an easy factor, right? So it means if it is production environment, mostly your resources would be running 24/7 or most of the times. That's the general behavior. You may have some other type of applications, but that can be looked at separately. But mostly in production environment, you will have resources which would be running 24/7. So they kind of become straightaway candidates for doing commitment. So you can do reservation or you can do savings plans, right? But for the non-prod, so here, if you go for prod, we can go ahead and commit, right? But for what I would say is, but for non-prod, you need to analyze further, right? So that's where what would you analyze, right? What's the hours, number of hours for which it is running, right? Now, if you think that it is gonna run in such a way that it works out to be roughly 8 months, a year, then yes, you can go ahead and actually do the reservation. Otherwise you may choose not to do reservation and go ahead and implement it, or basically go ahead and pay based on demand rate. So if I further take it this way, so let's say 8 months or more, then you go ahead and do commit, or basically do some sort of reservation or savings plan. Or if it is, let's say, less than 8 months, then let it be on the on demand rate, let it be on the on demand pricing. Okay, so that's for the non-prod thing, right? Now, how do you really ensure that in the non-prod environment your resources are actually running not 24/7? Because what happens is people would continue to just run the resources, because most of the times uh, the folks who are responsible for doing the development, they are not the ones who are responsible for controlling the cost. Though if you understand FinOps principles on cloud, it is quite important for everyone to understand cloud cost, right? Which means if you are provisioning resources, it is important for you to understand its cost, and you are responsible for it, right? Think of the scenario: a person is using a couple of EC2 instances, couple of RDS maybe in their environment, and they use it for 8-9 hours per day. The discipline is not there in the folks to go ahead and actually stop it when they are not using it, right? So because of the lack of that discipline, the resources are running unnecessarily and it costs you money. So in the non-prod environments, you need to really enforce a scheduling strategy of resources. You need to give either an automated mechanism to do that, or enforce people that they manually implement it, and then you run some sort of reports, right? So in case of non-prod, it also becomes very important that you implement resource scheduling, or you can call it parking, right? So there used to be a tool called Park My Cloud, which started as a very small thing many years back, and that tool became quite big actually, and I think it got acquired by a big organization or by a big vendor now. But anyway, what that tool did was, initially it just gave you the facility to specify a start time and stop time for your EC2 instances, and you just schedule it in that particular tool, and that tool would manage the starting and stopping of your EC2 instances, right? So you can, there are a lot of tools at this time in the market which you can go ahead and look at it, but look at those, but then please try and understand that how much does it cost, right? It should not be the case. It should not happen that you are actually spending a lot per EC2 instance to just switch it on or switch it off, right? So in order to implement this, of course, then it could be manual or automated, as we discussed. If it is manual, then you need to enforce some sort of reporting, right? If it is not manual, you want to do it in an automated manner, then you can look at something like instance scheduler, right? So it's a small utility written by AWS. You can just go ahead and use it. You can easily you can easily start using it. It is just composed of a DynamoDB table, a Lambda function, and a couple of other things. You can just implement it in your environment and go ahead and use it. Just go ahead and Google for AWS Instance Scheduler, and you'll get that. Right? So like you pay very less for the resources which are there behind Instance Scheduler. So with that, you can go ahead and implement scheduling of resources, and you need to really see and understand what are those resources which you need to stop. Most of the resources which have got a compute component involved, those resources need to be stopped. For example, EC2, RDS, any other type of databases which are node based, right? For example, you don't need to implement any resource parking in case of DynamoDB, right? Because in DynamoDB is a fully managed database, you are not responsible for its compute separately, or basically there's no node running all the time just for you. It's not that way, right? In the same way, you don't need to worry about underlying compute of your S3 service, right? You don't need to, because you have to just understand that your pricing model depends on the fact that when you read or write from S3 bucket, at that time you get charged, right? And the amount of storage which you are consuming. So you need to be mindful of this thing, that what are those components where there is a per hour charge, and is there an option to stop those resources? So many years back there was no option to stop RDS instances, right? But then they brought that option that you can go ahead and stop RDS, right? So create a list of that, and in your environment, all those resources which can be stopped, you should stop that in the non-prod environment, right? That's very important. So that's one. Sometimes there may be a scenario that right, as we discussed, even in the non-prod, it may happen that there are few things, or there are few resources which have a very valid reason, and because of that, let's say they run 16 hours a day or 18 hours a day, right? Every day they run for 16 hours or 18 hours. If really there is a valid use case of that type, then you should go ahead and calculate that what would be its overall running duration for the whole year, and if it comes near to that break even point of like that 7-8 months, then you may go ahead and do reservation or commitment for that as well. Okay, so that's for the non-prod. Now coming back to the prod one, right? So for prod, if we pick up, we said you need to commit, of course. So you can go ahead and do two things. You can go ahead and do reservation, right? Or you can go ahead and do savings plan, right? So these two options are there. Now, of course, reservation is applicable to many resource types. It's applicable to EC2, RDS, Redshift, OpenSearch, etc., Elasticache, etc., right? There are many. So we can come to all of them one by one, but there are a couple of these resource types where you can go ahead and have a reservation, and reservation is typically 1 year or 3 year, as you know that. But within that, of course, if we talk about EC2, in case of EC2, within reservation there is a lot more detail to be understood. So for now, let me just get rid of this, and we'll talk about other services later. For now, within EC2, if you see, you have got reservation and you have got savings plans, and within reservation there are a couple of types for EC2, and within savings plan also there are like 2 types which are available. So we'll try and decipher that. So if you have option open between reservation and savings plan, which one should you choose? That's the first thing to understand, right? You know that for reservation and for savings plan, for both of the things, you have got 1 year and 3 year duration available. So in which one do you save more? So the thing is, you will save same amount if you are going for, let's say, regional reservation here, right? If you go for regional reservation and you go for a particular type of savings plan, the saving would be same. I think it would be good if we see that with an example. Okay. All right. So I just opened the reserved instances pricing for you, and we know that within reserved instances you have got, you know, broadly two types. So one is standard reserved instance, and then you have convertible. The major difference is that standard is something in which you cannot change the instance type, family, etc., whereas in convertible you can change the family of instance as well. So you have that flexibility, right? And what I've done here is I've just filtered it for one instance type. Let's say M52X large. We are looking at Ohio region, 1 year, no upfront cost. Okay, of course, Linux operating system. So with M52X large, compared to on-demand rate, which is 0.3840, you save 37% when you go with 1 year, no upfront, right? This is with standard reserved instance, in which you cannot change the family of the instance. Now, if you go to savings plan, in savings plan you have got two types, right? EC2 instance savings plan and compute savings plan. So compute is a more generic word. So if you take compute savings plans, of course it applies to, I mean, it can apply to EC2 usage, Fargate usage for containers, or Lambda usage for serverless, right? Whereas EC2 instance savings plans would apply only to EC2 instance usage. So if you are quite sure about the instance type which you want to use, and if your usage is mostly on EC2 side, then you can go ahead and take EC2 instance savings plan. In that, if you see, you will make 37% saving compared to the on-demand rates. So whether you go with reserved instance or you go with savings plan, you will get the same benefit, right? Or same amount of savings. So it is very easy to understand that what you get in the standard reserved instance, same amount of savings you get in the EC2 instance savings plan. Now, if you compare for a minute the convertible one, right? The convertible reserved instance, where you have the flexibility to change the, instance family and all. There, if you see, you will be saving 27%. Of course, the saving would be lesser than this one, right? Because you have more flexibility. So in the same way, when you go to the savings plan and you go for compute savings plan for EC2, with M52X large, you will be saving 27%. So in your mind, you can kind of understand this thing, that if you were about to use standard reserved instances, instead of that, you can use EC2 instance savings plan. And if you were about to use convertible reserved instances, then you may go ahead and use compute savings plans for EC2 instances, because this one then gives you even more flexibility. Why? Because the amount which you commit, right, under compute savings plan, that would not be applicable only to your EC2 usage. It would also be, it can be used for your usage against AWS Fargate and Lambda, and that's the flexibility which you get. That flexibility you won't have here in convertible thing, right? So for example, let's say I have gone ahead and committed $100 per hour, right, under compute savings plans, and maybe today I am running more of my resources on EC2, but I do some modernization on my applications, and because of that I move my workload to containers or to serverless. No issues, right? I don't need to worry about the savings thing. I mean, maybe for the first 6 months my workload was running on EC2 instances, but later on it moves to Fargate or to Lambda. I don't need to worry about it. I'll continue to get the benefit. I'll continue to save money, right? Whereas with convertible, the maximum flexibility which you will have is that you will be able to move between different EC2 instance types. That's what you'll be able to do. Okay, so I hope you got that part clear. Now coming back to this, so yes, you can go ahead and do reservation or savings plan. So is it that based on saving or based on the discount, if you have to choose which one you will choose? So we understood that based on discount, both of these would be able to give you the same amount of discount, but we saw that with savings plan you can get some more flexibility. So when it comes to the amount of, when it comes to from the discount perspective, you will go ahead and choose savings plan because it will give you same amount of discount, but some additional flexibility, right? So I can write here same discount but additional flexibility. So then the next question could be, is it that then there is no use of reservation anymore, or EC2 reservation should have just gone away, right? But no, when you want capacity guarantee, that is when you should go for reservation, and within reservation you should go for zonal reservation, right? Zonal reservation for capacity guarantee. This is one unique thing which you will get only when you go ahead and do the reservation. So for those workloads which are quite critical for you and you want to make sure that you always have the capacity available for those workloads in a particular availability zone, so for that purpose you can go ahead and do zonal reservation. Okay, we have another video where we have shown you how to go ahead and do zonal reservation. If you want, you can go ahead and check that video. So this part is understandable. Now let's say, where should you go ahead and do this? In an organization where you have got, let's say, 50 or 100 AWS accounts, and there are different business units who are running different amount of workloads. Should you actually go and do this reservation at an account level, or where should you go ahead and do it, right? So maybe let me just put it here. So should it be done at every account level, or where should you go ahead and do it? So the answer for this is, for zonal reservations, right? Zonal reservations should be done at the account level. Should be done at the account level. Why so? Because see, you are doing zonal reservation because of the fact that you want the capacity to be guaranteed for one of your workloads. Think about this. There is an organization which has got, let's say, again 50 AWS accounts, and out of that, in account number 3 there is a very important application which is running, and they want to make sure that for that particular application they should have 4 EC2 instances of M5 4x large type always, they want it to be available, right? So that's the requirement. So what should happen is that in that particular AWS account, in the defined availability zones, let's say availability zone A and B, whatever you have chosen, in those availability zones you need the capacity to be available. So for zonal reservation, it would make sense to go ahead and do it in those accounts, in that particular account, and you should choose the correct availability zone while doing the reservation. So that's about the zonal reservation. But what about any other reservation? Or let's say if you are just doing normal regional or convertible or savings plans, then all of that should be done at the organization level, right? So if you pick up be it regional or convertible reservation or savings plan, right? All of this should be done at the organization level. Why so? Because doing this at the organization level gives you a lot of benefit. What is that benefit? The benefit is that if you do it at the organization level and the actual usage within your multiple accounts change, even then you get the benefit. So think about it like this. Let's take a smaller example. In your organization, you have got 10 AWS accounts, and for the first few months in the year, you saw that, okay, maybe account number 3, 4, and 5 were using a lot of compute. So they were heavily using it. So whereas account number 7, 8, 9 were probably using it quite less. And then few things changed. Let's say the account number 345, which we're using a lot earlier, from there couple of applications got decommissioned, and hence the usage went down there, whereas account number 7 and 8 and 9 now have new applications, because of which the usage has increased a lot, right? So if that has happened, if you have done things at every account level, it would be difficult for you. Whereas if you have done things at organization level, you don't need to worry about it, because the overall usage kind of gets consolidated, and whatever whatever savings plan or reservation which you have done at the organization level. When I say at organization level, you would do this in the master account or the management account. So whatever you have done here at the organization level, that gets applied, right? And that way you continue to save money, right? So that's an important thing to understand. Now, another very important stuff is when you are trying to do this, let's say we have already understood that between a reservation and savings plan, you will go for savings plan when you don't need capacity guarantee. That's the preferred thing. So when you are doing the savings plan at the organization level, which one should you select? Whether you should select the EC2 instance savings plan, or you should select compute savings plan, right? So between these two, which one is easy or convenient to do? Compute savings plan is a lot more convenient to do, right? Because you can just go ahead and kind of commit for an amount per hour, and you are not restricted around this fact that which instance family you can go ahead and use. You can actually go ahead and use any instance family, right, for that matter. And even you can use resources across regions and things like that. You've got more flexibility basically, right? In the compute savings plan, you have got more flexibility, okay? But in this one, you have got more saving. So always remember that when you look at any offering from a cloud provider, you will see this pattern, that where you have got more flexibility, there the savings would be lesser. Where you have got lesser flexibility, there the savings would be more, right? So the whole game is all about figuring this thing out correctly. So if you have time, or if you have possibility to talk to individual application owners, and you are able to get confirmation from them in terms of the instance family which they are using for their workload, then you can go for EC2 instance savings plan, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that for this one, you should have confirmation from the workload owners, right, about the family type at least, right? Yeah, so if you have that, of course, this is first thing, and the other one is that they should be using EC2 only, right? Right. So if these two things are there, then yes, you can go ahead and actually go ahead and actually just do EC2 instance savings plan. But if you do not have this confirmation from workload owners, let's say you are working for a big organization and you just simply do not have time to actually go and talk to each and every application owner and confirm with them, because it could be a really, really tedious exercise depending on how many applications are running or how big your organization is. So in that scenario, what you could do is just go ahead and straightway book a compute savings plan, right? Because in this, you have a lot of flexibility. We already discussed that you can go ahead and basically run any instance type in any region, right? So you have all that flexibility. So as soon as you commit to a compute savings plan, you start saving money. And irrespective of the fact that which instance type they are using, you just start saving money straight away. So the important thing is, how do you find it out, right? So what you could do is go to the billing section, right, in the master account. And here if you try to go to Cost Explorer, you will find savings plan recommendation on the left side, right? So should you just see that and go ahead and commit to it, whatever is mentioned there? My suggestion would be, no, do not go ahead and commit 100% of that. A good idea would be that you probably pick up, let's say, 50-60% of what is recommended there. And this number might change, right? You can think what works best for you, but try to look at the pattern for the last 60 days or 30 days and see how it is changing. The important aspect is that do not go ahead and commit 100% of what the recommendation is showing you. It's best to first pick a part of it. Let's say the recommendation says that go ahead and commit for $100 per hour. So you may take a decision that let me commit for $50 or $60 per hour, and then analyze it further for let's say a week or 15 days and see that how much is my coverage. So your next set of action would be, first thing is look at the recommendation and commit for 60% of that recommendation, right? And then observe for, let's say, next 15 days, right? And post that you can commit more, right? So what happens is that AWS also shows you very clearly that how much is your coverage, right? How much is your savings plan coverage? So this is an important one. So the place where you see the savings plan recommendation, there you will also be able to see the savings plan coverage. So savings plan coverage tells you that in your environment, all the compute which you are running, out of that, how much of it is actually covered by savings plan. So it's like this. I don't think you need to target and achieve 100% coverage with savings plan. You may want to do 100% but only in those scenarios where all of your workload runs 24/7, right? If all of your workload doesn't run 24/7, then achieving 100% coverage by savings plan doesn't make sense. So see, it would happen that there are resources in your organization which run 24/7, and there are other resources which run for, let's say, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours in a day. So things which are running only 8 hours, 10 hours, or 12 hours a day, probably on demand is the best pricing plan for those things, right? You don't need to commit and try to get lower cost, because that is anyway on demand, and those resources are not running 24/7. Those resources are probably not gonna run on the weekend. So do not worry about achieving 100% thing with savings plan, and that's where I'm saying you need to do it in chunks. Do it in small chunks. So for example, if you don't have any saving plan, you did 60% of the recommendation first, and then see how does the recommendation change in a period of a week or 15 days. After that, maybe do few more hours and then observe. So that way you can go ahead and actually take care of your EC2 commitment and saving money via commitment. So this was one part, right? So if I just take it back here, we have this whole kind of mind map which we wrote about it, right? Now, after the commitment, we also discussed the non-prod here. In case of non-prod, we said you need to make sure that you are stopping the resources, you are parking the resources. That's very important. How to do that? It can be done in many ways. You can use an external tool, you can use instant scheduler, you can also use config rules or tags. You can apply tags, and then config rules can evaluate those tags and give you a report which tells you that what are those resources which are actually of non-prod type but are running 24/7 and those type of things. But ultimately you need to achieve this thing that your resources should be stopped. And more than automation, it is also about people getting onboarded with this idea that anything which is non-prod needs to be stopped. Otherwise, you will continue to waste money there. Now, whatever we discussed here is all about EC2, and within EC2, the compute part. But within EC2, there are more things like the disk, the data transfer, which needs to be understood. So for example, we will also talk about the disk usage, right? And the other related things related to the disk of EC2, which is actually EBS, right? So we are talking about EBS, and there will also be another item which would be data transfer, right? So we will talk about both of these things as well, but in the next video. So this is probably somewhat long video, but if we need to discuss it this way, it takes this much time. So if it is helpful, let me know, and then we'll release the next video in this playlist. Okay, thank you everyone, take care.